There is a deep lack of trust in institutions right now, and people are trusting authentic creators that they feel are sources of truth. So, this is our moment. We have to be engaging in this issue, and there's no more urgent time than right now for everyone to feel, as a creator, invited into this conversation and to speak about it. And you don't have to be a climate expert, and you don't have to be briefed like a expert. You just have to be engaging people's attention and care around the issue.
Hello and welcome to this third edition of Code Green, Conversations for the Future We Want and Our Kids Deserve. I am so excited. I say that all the time, but really, really, really excited because I am just back from the Hollywood Climate Summit and lucky enough to have the three co-founders, all young women, just brimming with passion and experience, and they have pulled together something that has grown every year. It was like every other climate and green conference I've been to over 28 years of covering the beat. The excitement, the passion, the sense of purpose, the positivity was there. But this may have been even a little higher, maybe because those of us who are in media realize that this is exactly an idea whose time has come. And with this particular administration, there's such a need to come together. I don't know, there seemed to be a little extra oomph behind the enthusiasm, and that was great. Give us just a little, maybe each of you, a little bit of background, how you came together, and then we'll jump into, why this was needed, what need it's filling, where you plan to take it, your vision. And then I would like to talk specifically about this summit because there were some highlights, certainly for me, and I'm sure for you as well. Who wants to start?
I'll kick it off. My name is Allison Begalman. My background is in entertainment, specifically screenwriting, as well as community building, community organizing, and that's sort of what brought me into this space and to be one of the founders of the conference. I was doing community building within the entertainment space sort of after work as an assistant years ago, and then started to realize that there was this intersection of social justice and social impact with entertainment that sort of hadn't been tapped in terms of democratizing the conversation for all types of professionals, whether you are an actor or producer, or even working in social media and journalism, and that there was very cross sectors. A bunch of us ended up coming together. We realized that the conversation had been happening within entertainment, but not, as I said, in a way that was like intergenerational, that was intersectional, and that was just available for everyone to interact with, all types of professionals. And so we had our first conference as a one-day summit in May of 2020. It was supported by NYU Los Angeles. We were all volunteer, and we were all just really excited to put it out digitally. And it had a really great response. We had over 15,000 people watch it through YouTube. We were live streaming it throughout the day. Each year, we would integrate more in-person opportunities and activations. And then in June of 2023, we ended up building a partnership with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and they hosted us at their Samuel Goldwyn Theater. And that sort of propelled us to grow into more of a mainstream, large venue conference. And that's what you saw in this past year. So
Was that the first time it was in person, 2023? This was my first time.
yes, it fully in person. Yes, we had some opportunities like hikes and, drinks and evening and stuff like that. But again, we were still in the COVID time. So this 2023 and onward was the first time where we had it fully in person and live streamed it. And then our digital conference platform, you can network with people, do one-on-one meetings, etc.
A lot of networking. Okay, I'll go from Allison to Ali Weinstein. I'll properly introduce you, and then Heather Fipps. Just tell us what you think is relevant in terms of how you got here and how you came together.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Weinstein. I am a fellow co-founder of the Hollywood Climate Summit. I followed a somewhat similar path to Allison. I have always been a very kind of climate conscious and previously climate anxious person. Even since I was a kid, I was always writing sci-fi climate stories. And so when I graduated into the industry, I just noticed a huge gap in terms of what content was on screen, kind of reflecting how myself and my generation was talking about climate a lot, but we were not seeing that reflected in our media. And then additionally, I was hearing a lot of climate initiatives that were happening on set, but not so much happening in office spaces. And that's usually where I was because I came up through film and TV development and distribution, and then into television writers' rooms. So when we started the summit in 2020, I was also doing a lot of assistant rights organizing in the industry, and I was leading different professional groups in the industry. And I was like, assistants have so much power that we don't realize. And to Allison's point of creating young entertainment activists, a lot of people were expressing, how do I shift this power into social justice movements? And I really wanted to find a way to focus on climate. And so I was introduced to Allison. We met, and then that's kind of where the summit began with a lot of other people's help, including Heather. But yeah, I tend to mostly focus on climate storytelling consulting and programming and talent relations. That's my lane within the summit.
I call myself an eco warrior and an eco worrier, but the best way to stop worrying and stop being anxious or overcome by anxiety is to just jump in and do something, right?
That's why I said a previously climate anxious person, because obviously I have my own moments of being like, oh God, this part of this thing is not maybe going very well for the world, but I have so much less day-to-day anxiety about it being active in the conversation.
It's the best prescription, truly. It really does work. And you start small, it grows, and the mood at every one of these conferences, like I said, is so high. It's the opposite of what the public would expect, right? They might think it's a bunch of gloom and doomers. We're angry, which we can have our moments that we should, mostly privately. Maybe that's why when we come together, it's just like a party atmosphere. And it's the best kind of party because it's not trivial excitement. It's like I just obviously love environmentalists because you care about something larger than yourself. So I think, especially maybe post-COVID, that coming together just brings the energy level so high. Okay, Heather, last but not least.
My name is Heather Fipps. I'm also a fellow co-founder of the Hollywood Climate Summit and recently stepped into the role of executive director for the organization. And I began in the film industry doing many different departments, from camera to art department to some producing, and really started to feel a disconnect from my value system working in the film industry, with many of the stories that I would be working on not really reflecting what I was experiencing in my own world. I grew up in Big Bear Lake. It's a beautiful mountain region just 2 hours outside of LA, and found myself working in the summer heat on film crews while in my hometown of Big Bear, which is an alpine forest. Forest fires were forcing my family to evacuate almost on a yearly basis. I'd lose some of my favorite places, forest where I grew up, the forest where I got married to my husband, burned down. And while I was working on a film set, and just really felt like, what is this industry even doing, not knowing that this is happening? And why isn't this conversation happening in the media sphere? Because we are reaching 5 billion people a day for 4 hours on average. What are we saying, and why are we saying it? And where is the opportunity here? So I redirected my career path to pursue studying media and social impact. I became a professor of that and developed really a curriculum and a framework for really understanding the ripple effects that media can have, and strategies for engaging audiences in conversations that are really going to move the needle on an issue. And then I started to also pursue the role of philanthropy and worked for the Redford Center and started to push resources to that exact effort. So really wanted to drive funding towards filmmaking and impact campaigns and really connecting social impact issues to media creation, all the while driving support to this community ecosystem and really bringing that advocacy of that mission to the community of the Hollywood Climate Summit alongside Ali and Allison. And it's been truly incredible to see the growth of this community and the need that we have filled. To your point, Betsy, I think that feeling that I had of what is this industry doing about this and does anyone care was resoundingly answered with a yes. And to date, we've engaged over 30,000 people and over 7,000 companies that have participated in our year-round events and programs, engaging the creative and communicator community in the climate conversation.
How many attendees were there in person, and how many more did you reach via streaming?
This year, I think we had probably about 1,700 people that participated, and I would say probably about 1,400 of those were registered to attend in person and moved through the event. Virtually, we did something different this year where we live streamed publicly out to YouTube. So we're actually finding that our view count is continuing to rise and people are continuing to find the virtual content. As Allison said, we started during COVID. It was extremely important to us to stay accessible and open to the global community that was built in that first year. We've engaged over 65 countries. And so making our panels public and free has always and will always be an important priority to us.
I really appreciate that sliding scale for those of us activists. I'm not early stage, but I also haven't been paid yet in 28 years. So I got the $100 ticket. Thank you for that. And the mood was so welcoming, so warm. There was no Hollywood snobbery. Maybe the snobs aren't smart enough to come, but it just, I felt it was very warm, very of the moment. What were some of the highlights for each of you from this one? It was all one big highlight for me being first time at the summit.
For context, I mean, it is on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out, but it basically, we took Big Oil to task and we put their communication tactics on trial, and we set up a whole fake courtroom on the stage. We had a judge who was Simone Missick, who played the judge on All Rise, that show for 4 years. And then we had comedians from a lot of different backgrounds play the defense, who was defending Big Oil's tactics, and the prosecution, who was fighting against them. And then a panel of experts who could kind of add a bit more of a grounded perspective on what are the real things that happen on the day-to-day in terms of how Big Oil has been manipulating our view of the climate crisis, of their negative impacts, etc., through media for almost a century.
Laughter in the audience, you really hit the things that drive us crazy, the hypocrisy, the ads, the opposite of what the reality is for those of us paying attention.
Exactly. And to your point, in terms of what you were saying about feeling welcomed in, I mean, that is something I think we're all very proud of, that we've had that energy for the past 6 years. But I think something that really stood out to me this year is I got a lot of feedback from people that they are seeing it's the only conference they go to where they see new faces every single year. Our kind of intersection of climate and media is a pretty small space. And so the fact that we can bring new people into that every year while maintaining that trust and relationship with the people who have been supporting us for the past 5, 6 years, this year really, I think for me, hit home that there were a lot of new faces in the crowd as well. And that was really exciting to us.
I only personally knew about 5 people there, which thrilled me because I do see a lot of the same suspects, God bless them, but seeing new crowds and a lot of young faces. Evlando Cooper, who was on one of your panels, I've interviewed him for Media Matters because my passion is getting my mainstream news industry to take this on. And I've got a chapter in a book. I'm writing a whole book about the dereliction of duty there. So he and I really can go to town on what's wrong with this picture. This is just a little insert, and I don't know if you are aware, but only about 1.5% of all news coverage, network news coverage, is focused on climate, which is pathetic. And it's not by accident. That's maybe for another day, but what you're doing is the closest thing to that, and that's taking mainstream media entertainment side of it through film and television and journalism. I'd love to help you bring more journalism into that because that's where I've lived, and there's a lot of inside scoop to share that can be helpful to the audience, I think, the activists. It's so important. It's so crazy when you have parallel universes, when we know what we know, and then we go out in the world and everyone who are not in this world seem to be partying and restaurants are buzzing and everything is all great. And it's like, whoa, and I've been tempted to like stand up on a chair in a crowded New York restaurant and say, do you people know what's going on? Let's take that energy and harness it. That divide, that's exactly probably what you're trying to bridge, to bring popular culture and entertainment to the masses.
What you just said is right. I think that there's actually the majority of people care about this issue, but what they're not doing is paying attention to it. As we've seen, this was not even a priority agenda for our extremely important national election that happened earlier this year.
Yet again,
and we are the community that holds people's attention and is the best in the world at getting people's attention. And so what we need is the people that are creating the things that are getting people's attention to be engaging in this issue, or it's not going to be a priority at the scale that we and the timeline that we absolutely urgently need for it to be. And so it's not just about any one sector. That's why we're very cross-sector. We've engaged with video game designers, fashion, music, sports, digital creators, social media, and yes, film and television and journalism, because this is we are the media ecosystem and we are the information ecosystem. And this is where people are expecting to learn about things, find their community. And there is a deep lack of trust in institutions right now. And people are trusting authentic creators that they feel are sources of truth. So this is our moment. We have to be engaging in this issue. And there's no more urgent time than right now for everyone to feel, as a creator, invited into this conversation and to speak about it. And you don't have to be a climate expert, and you don't have to be briefed like a expert. You just have to be engaging people's attention and care around the issue.
Mhm. And I love the concept of bringing this work to where you already are working. That's what I did. I recycled my career from broadcast news woman to, green producer host exclusively. And that really works, right? Because you've already got your own built-in community. And yet so many people want to do something, but they think they have to go to get a PhD in science or something, and that's not the case at all. Allison, you might want to add something to the highlights part of our conversation.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think for me, it was the intersectionality of the programming this year that was really, I mean, I think that really also brought a lot of people into the conversation and made them feel welcome because for us, we see so many different arenas as climate. For example, we had a program called Why Are We Consuming This that we partnered with Mother Jones on. And just we talked about what you eat, what you buy, what you watch, and like anyone can connect with that. I think at a lot of other climate conferences, sometimes you see the programming and you're like, I don't know what that means, or, this doesn't apply to me per se, especially if you're like a creator who hasn't, or a creative person who hasn't really spent a lot of time in the space. So for us, we are always about how do we mainstream this? How do we, have a very high level of production? How do we bring in new voices into the conversation? So yeah, we were able to talk about consumption. We talked about care, like care workers and their role in climate, especially after, is direct response work to wildfires and other disasters. We
That's
also
highly
talked about
relevant
movement
in
build.
Los Angeles 5 months after the fact. That came up a lot.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's something that we
Right?
knew our audience
So relevant.
had directly experienced. So we're very mindful of including that. We also included movements and movement building, which can relate to any issue, and as well as climate migration. So to us, like we really we wanted anyone to be able to show up and to integrate into the conversation.
Wonderful. One of the big problems, of course, is the disinformation campaign coming from Fox, Not News, and other right-wing outlets. And I'm so glad you had that graphic of all the red right-wing media outlets, red versus blue. It's like 30-1, and I have personally hit that wall so many times. Right-wing radio was like 95% of talk radio. And when we wonder how we get a president, again, who is a science denier, or as I call deniasaur, half the country clearly does not understand what's going on with our environment. And that's why there's such a critical need to get the information, inspiration, motivation out there. And I'm so glad you're doing this. What I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, did you have a pitch fest this year? Because I was looking forward to that. And I didn't meet any producers. I saw on the attendee list there were some people from Netflix, but was really hoping to see if anybody was interested in like a green talk show, a green Oprah. That's sort of my vision. Have a live audience and have people come up and confess their eco sins and have a climate convert segment. I've got this all figured out in my head. And maybe they were there, I just didn't get to meet them. But otherwise, I was totally satisfied and blown away.
So we didn't do our pitch fest this year. I think we had two really successful years of it. And for context, for the audience who doesn't know, the past couple of years have run a climate story pitch fest where writers from all over the world have the opportunity to either come in person to Los Angeles or pitch virtually any climate story that they have, and they go through an entire application process, and we have experts and Hollywood folks review those and kind of narrow it down to like 20 to 24 of those pitches, and then those writers either in person or virtually. We've been very lucky to be supported by NBC Universal in this pitch fest where people get to come to the lot and pitch those stories to executives, to managers, to agents, so that and it was a twofold thing of getting more of those climate stories out there, but also getting those agents, managers, producers to have a better understanding of what is a climate story, the breadth of topics that it can be about, that it's not just documentaries, that there's lots of incredible scripted content that people have from their own lived experiences, from their incredible imaginations, and that it's not just this like doom and gloom apocalypse and or documentary narrative, although we as a team appreciate those in their own way, but really kind of broadening that idea of what is a climate story. And we have had really a lot of success in terms of creatives kind of really pinpointing those ideas and understanding how to pitch them, as well as those executives and people on the business side getting excited about what's possible. And so because of that, we're kind of taking our learnings right now from those past two pitch fests and really trying to target into, okay, like what is the process for getting those on screen in the most direct ways? And so because of that, we're just kind of reimagining right now, but we'll definitely be coming back to our pitch fest in the future. And there definitely were a lot of producers in the room from many of our studios and independent producers. So hopefully you'll get to connect with them at other events in the future.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that we've separated the missions of our different events, and that's really the beauty of us becoming a nonprofit is we're able to make sort of targeted activations. And so our marketplace and our pitch fest, those will be the forums for, sales pitches to happen and projects to gain support and visibility. And there's, there's intentionality and curation that happens behind those kind of events. The conference, I will say, we are really trying to make a safe place for learning so that people don't feel like they're coming to be, receiving a business proposition necessarily, but they are invited to level up their literacy on the issue, deepen their care, build their community, and experience the joy and enthusiasm that you spoke to. And that's the purpose of the larger summit. And therein we'll have these other programmatic initiatives that are really also trying to take that business curatorial approach where there will be pipeline programs to support storytellers and stories.
Mm-hmm. And having covered this beat for quite a while, I've seen the evolution going from, the Emma Awards, Environmental Media Association, I think it is, for like they would give an award to someone who's put a subliminal quick shot of a recycling bin or something. I said, that's not going to do it. It's a good start, right? And they were always so subliminal about it. That was the start. And then the whole sustainability movement for on set, because it is so wasteful. And I hate waste. That's what got me into this. I can imagine all the food, just the food alone. But now really weaving and creating stories, whole stories, and putting them into shows like Grey's Anatomy. I didn't see the Jurassic Park presentation, but I talk about dinosaurs a lot. I'm so glad that it's expanding because it needs to, and fast and loud.
That's the takeaway that we can honestly say from our vantage point is that this work is scaling at every level. People in various genres, disciplines, mediums are expressing their care for the environment in a number of different ways. And I think it's actually more exciting to think about who are the unreached and underengaged audiences that these messages are reaching out to. I think that is our mission moving forward. One of our biggest challenges in starting the summit was people had a very narrow scope of what they thought an environmental story or a story that included climate means. And what we've really tried to do and highlight is subvert those expectations and showcase things like Grey's Anatomy, Jurassic Park, video games that are embedding these themes inside of these wildly successful cross-partisan, nonpartisan audiences, the four quadrants, intergenerational, they're engaging people in these issues. And it doesn't feel like you're hiding the broccoli or whatever that dumb metaphor is that I hate that people use. Like, it doesn't feel like you're shoving the issue down their throat. We are just leveling up the public's consciousness and engagement in various highly entertaining ways. And we're so excited to see that movement and that scale and grow. And we experience it. We almost can't fit everything that's happening on the stage. It's a true challenge to curate what is really exciting every year because there's so much happening. And I think that's a really positive thing.
And it's so important because I've long predicted this, and sure enough, it happened. Kind of like for a long time, politicians and the public said, problem, what problem? And then the next, like almost a comic, the next box would be, oh yeah, we're screwed. Of course, it's too late. What about that time in between when some of us were screaming from the rooftops that didn't have enough solar panels, and because there was the society as a whole was so good at kicking the carbon can down the road for so long. There's so much catching up to do. This needs to just happen on a bigger, louder scale. Clearly, if anyone needs evidence, again, look who's in charge right now. And one whole party, and they politicized it. It didn't just happen accidentally, doesn't acknowledge the threat, let alone rolling things back. So it really is up to those of us who get it to use our expertise to bring it to the mainstream. Because if we don't go beyond the choir, it just won't happen. And the research shows people are finally saying, oh my gosh, well, what can I do? Well, will it matter? Is it too late? And if nobody's there in mainstream, my focus is kind of news programming to answer that question. What a really bad reason for the planet to die. Ignorance, shouldn't be the reason. And again, if we need evidence that people don't understand, and we have a low eco IQ in this country, more so than any other developed nations, look who's in charge. And I think if most people, parents and grandparents especially, knew what we know and the dire nature of it and all the solutions and solutionaries out there, they wouldn't vote for a candidate that is not absolutely not working in their interests and the interest of their children, those they love.
And I think something that we have really been trying to, or at least that I'll speak for myself, that I've been trying to message out in a lot of my work, because so much of it is working with writers and executives, et cetera, on telling those climate stories, is one of the first things we need to do is remove this idea that the US is split into these groups that don't believe in climate change. That we're past that. Like if you look at the stats, depending on what research you're looking at, somewhere between 70 and 80% of the US believe that climate change is happening, that it exists. So like we have already moved past needing to market that reality. It more so is those individuals who, may have voted against those interests don't have an understanding of how climate is going to affect them, and that, or how it already is affecting them. And that's why we need to tell better, more direct, more authentic climate stories to those audiences. It's not that we have to convince them that climate change is real. They already believe that, and they already understand to an extent how they're seeing it change their day-to-day lives. We just need to be telling entertaining stories about it. And that is kind of the exciting thing about where we're at, is there are countless examples. Like, there is the negative of that we are all experiencing the climate crisis at this point, but the story opportunity is tremendous. And that is really who we need to be, marketing towards. Of it is not this like just middle America situation. Like we all are kind of on the same page that climate change is real. It's just like we need to be telling stories to those audiences.
That same research shows that people want our government, to be doing a lot more. And look what's happening, rolling backwards. So it does depend on who you vote for, how you vote. The other point I wanted to make was there was a lot of comedy, a lot of comedians, and we have to laugh so we don't cry all the time. But I find people in this movement to be quite entertaining. Maybe it's a coping mechanism. And like you said, there's no shortage of material. My problem, one of the reasons I hesitated to start doing an interview series again, it's not who should I interview, who should I not interview? There's so many people and so many stories, and they have wisdom to share and passion to share. And like to not capture that, especially when a public is finally saying, what's going on? Will it matter? I think there is an interest to be informed, especially if you can weave humor and make it entertaining throughout. I mean, like I have sort of the other side of what you guys are doing, and that's trying to make more the news interviews format entertaining by just who I choose. And I do a lot of play on words. Wake up and smell the carbon. We need to get off our gases, and that kind of disarms people. And you just kind of make it fun. And there's a lot to laugh at about ourselves, about our culture, right? So much irony, as you tapped into in many of the presentations.
Yeah, and I want to hear, I feel like Allison can speak to a lot of the comedy we've integrated over the years, but I think it is less a coping strategy and more a communication strategy. I really think it's coming from a place of excitement about how we can be communicating climate in a fun and way that people are going to more anecdotally share with people than they would if it was apocalyptic and depressing and apathetic. But Allison, if you want to talk about how we integrate our comedians.
Yeah, I mean, we started having comedians host the conference in our first big in-person activation in 2023. And that was sort of a little special sauce because not only are you laughing before programming, but also they do like exercise, like one of our comedians, Esteban Gast, who is a genius at climate comedy and just so knowledgeable about this intersection. He's always doing community building exercises before to get people to connect with each other, because that's something I also find at conferences. It's just like you either are sitting there and watching programming, or you have to like hustle the network, which me personally, I get a little bit stressed out networking with when I don't know anybody in the room. So to change the temperature in the space and make it feel more warm, that's very important to me. But I'll also say that I think they just make it more interesting. I don't have like a specific background in climate. So to me, when I have comedians sort of dumbing information down for me, I understand it better just on a like personal level. So I think we're just trying to, again, make the conversation accessible. And yes, of course, it is can be difficult to hear sometimes, but I do think it's now moving past that towards like everyone wants to laugh, everyone goes to comedy shows, everyone feels like um, they can connect better when there's humor in the conversation.
The dichotomy between, I mean, I talked about on the one hand, people just partying like it's normal times, business as usual out there. But I also, I'm sure you do notice a lot of glum faces walking down the street, and there's reason to be bummed out right now, right? With so much seemingly going downhill. But then I go to these events and it's like, these are the happiest people I know. We need to show that. And that's one of the reasons I transitioned from radio to video to show me and my guests, their hands excited, and there's so much energy and passion. And I really think that's the way we bring people in. Join our community. You'll have immediate friends, have a sense of purpose. And if you put a green tint on your work, you'll never have any job insecurity because we're here in terms of sustainability. We need to go here, especially when I talk to young people. So, the job may not be out there, that green job, but create it. Put a twist of lime on it, whatever it is you're interested in doing, whether it's medicine, law, nutrition, engineering, we're going to need you. And now there's climate psychologists, and I think I need to go to one of these days because I haven't so much experienced burnout, just deep frustration and disappointment with our structure of government and corporate media, and just the walls that have been put up in large part because of the disinformation media landscape. It's just like it would be hard enough. We have this epic challenge, right? The eco polycrises, climate being the mother of all of them, exacerbator of the oceans, all the issues. Without the dinosaur piece, right? And the fact that it's less so, but it's still going on in 2025. There's no programming on any network ongoing. I'm not talking about Earth Day. Let's have a special, on CNN, but just ongoing. And why not? There's so much crap on TV. And now that we know there's enough people who do want to know, that's the little gap I'm trying to fill, is just news information, but making it fun, exciting, engaging, relevant. It's really not hard to connect those dots for people. It's glaring, right? It just hasn't really been done in a way that has gone beyond the choir enough. So I thank you for what you're doing. Are there any main points you'd like to share before I ask, I think, my final question? What do you do in between the summits? What's next for you now that you've torn down the venue?
Yeah, well, we're a year-round nonprofit, so we really focus on bridging the creative and the communicator community with the climate community. We do that through annual events. We'll be activating in Atlanta later in the year. We'll be at New York Climate Week. We did a Sundance event earlier this year, and we're starting to branch out into international media communities as well. We also have our climate storyteller pipeline programs that we mentioned, Pitch Fest and the Marketplace. We also catalyze collider experiences where we do think tanks that incubate new ideas between different climate campaigns, and we pair them with social media creators or different media creators to accelerate those campaigns, come up with new content, and create new communities around really urgent and important issues grounded in meeting with experts and organizations doing that work daily. So that's what to look out from us. You can find us on HollywoodClimateSummit.com and also on LinkedIn and Instagram as Hollywood Climate Summit. Come check us out. We do community events all year, and the atmosphere you experienced is the ethos that we embody at every one of our events. So,
Question before I forget. You were streaming the main stage events. Were they all recorded and are they available to watch somewhere? Because I missed a few.
absolutely, they're all up on YouTube right now. Hollywood Climate Summit on YouTube, and our previous year's content is up there as well. So you can watch for free all of our panels that happened at this year's summit.
Great. And Allison and Ali, closing thoughts?
And Heather summed it up. That's
Yeah.
that's really it for us. Yeah, we're excited to keep doing programming and yeah, leveling up the conversation.
Well, thank you. Now I got a pitch, which I always forget to do, my program. I hope people will go to YouTube, look for Betsy Rosenberg interviews. There's a bunch more that I've done on my website, betsyrosenberg.com. And now this new format, Code Green, conversations for the future we want and that our kids deserve. And I thank you so much for doing your part and hope to be there again next year and maybe part of the Pitch Fest. Got a definite format in mind here that I think would help. Also, I've got a newsletter so that if you want to know when I do these interviews like this great one, when you can be notified, and that is on my website, betsyrosenberg.com. Just put subscribe. There's no spam. I can barely get the notification emails done. There's so much to do, right, ladies? I've never been busier.
It's
Same.
true.
But it matters. It matters. And they'll thank us someday.
Yes. Well,
If
thanks
not,
for having us, Betsy. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the work that you've done as well. We'll hope to see you next year.
absolutely. Good luck planning it. And I hope it keeps growing and growing.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Take care. Have a great green day.